Good morning to each and everyone. Welcome again to our subject. But before we will start with the main different topics of our subject, let us go back first to the review on basic concepts of accounting. So for the first chapter, it is an introduction to accounting. So these are the different learning objectives. Number one, define accounting. Number two, describe the nature and purpose of accounting. Number three, give examples of branches of accounting. Number four, state the function of accounting in the business. Number five, differentiate between external and internal users of accounting information. Number six, narrate the history or origin of accounting. Number seven, state the forms of business organization, and lastly, state the types of business according to their activities. So how do we define accounting? So based on this presentation, accounting is a process of identifying, recording, and communicating economic information that is useful in making economic decisions. So accounting is very helpful to the different decision makers. Now let us go to the definition of these different elements being used from the definition of accounting. So number one, identifying. The accountant analyzes each business transaction and identifies whether the transaction is an accountable event or non-accountable event. This is because only accountable events are recorded in the books of accounts. Non-accountable events are not recorded in the books of accounts. So it means that if the transaction is a personal transaction, then you should not record that in the books of accounts of the business. You only need to record the transaction which can affect the assets, liabilities, and other accounts of the business. Recording, the accountant recognizes the accountable events he has identified. This process is called journalizing. After journalizing, the accountant then classifies the effects of the event on the accounts. This process is called posting. So the process of transferring data from the general ledger to the general journal to the general ledger is called posting, while from the business documents to the general journal is called the journalizing. Communicating, at the end of each accounting period, the accountant summarizes the information processed in the accounting system in order to produce meaningful reports. Accounting information is communicated to interested users through accounting reports, the most common form of which is the financial statement. So our outputs by processing the different transactions will be the financial statements, which can be useful to the different decision makers. Nature of accounting. Accounting is a process with the basic purpose of providing information about economic activities intended to be useful in making economic decisions. So without these informations, the different decision makers cannot make a good and sound decisions. Types of information provided by accounting. You can see quantitative information, numbers. You can also see qualitative information. Example, that is different descriptions of these numbers like assets, liabilities, honors, equity, and other qualitative information. And lastly, financial information. Functions of accounting in business: to provide external users with information that is useful in making investment and credit decisions, and to provide internal users with information that is useful in managing the business. So there are two types of users: external and internal users. Brief history of accounting. Accounting can be traced as far back as the prehistoric times, perhaps more than 10,000 years ago. Archaeologists have found clay tokens as old as 8,500 BC and Mesopotamia, which were usually cones, these spears, and pellets. These tokens correspond to commodities like sheep, clothing, or bread. They were used in the Middle West in keeping records. After some time, the tokens were replaced by wet clay tablets. During such time, experts concluded this to be the start of the art of writing. Double entry records first came out during 1340 AD in Genoa, and 1494 the first system recording keeping dealing with the double entry recording system was formulated by Fra Luca Pacelli, a Franciscan monk and mathematician. The double entry recording system was included in Pacelli's book titled Summa di Arithmetica Geometria Proportioni and Proportionista, published on November 10, 1494 in Venice. The concept of double entry recording is being used to this day. Thus, Fra Luca Pacioli is considered as the father of modern accounting. So, accounting is very important in our day-to-day life, and one of the evidences was way back in the 10,000, more than 10,000 years ago. Who is the father of modern accounting again? Fra Luca Pacioli. So these are the common branches of accounting. So accounting is a very broad subject which is composed of different branches. Number one, financial accounting. Number two, management accounting. So let's see the types of accounting services provided by financial accounting and management accounting. First, financial accounting, general record keeping, maintenance of journals and ledgers, while management accounting, preparation of specifically tailored management reports. So, who are the different users of financial accounting? It can be internal and external users. While for the management accounting, internal users only, which is required by management to aid them in performing their management function. Another branches of accounting, government accounting and auditing. So let's go to the government accounting, which is our main subject for this semester. Generally, record keeping and preparation of financial reports for the government and its agencies. It also includes the preparation of budgets and accountability reports. Users of service required by the government and its agencies. So if you will work something in the government, so you need to comply with the different concepts and principles being applied by the government. Auditing, expression of an opinion on the correspondence between management assertions and established criteria. So if you are auditing, what I mean, if you are auditing some body or if you are auditing a business, then you should set the criteria and check if they're complying with those criteria. Then after that, if you are an independent auditor, you need to express an opinion based on the set of guidelines. Like for example, if they are qualified based on the report that you audited or other kinds of opinion. The most common form of such opinion is the independent auditor's report, which is attached to audited financial statements. Businesses with gross quarter revenues of 150,000 are required to have their financial statement audited by the independent certified public accountant. So if your gross quarterly revenues of 150,000, it should be audited by a certified public accountant. So independent. What do you mean by independent? So they're coming from external, which you hired him or her. Like for example, accountants coming from SGB and other accounting firms. Another branches of accounting, tax accounting and cost accounting, preparation of tax returns, providing tax advices. In the cost accounting, analysis of cost of products or services. Who are the users of this service under the tax accounting? All businesses are required to file tax returns. Some taxpayers may require the professional advice of a tax practitioner regarding the management of taxes. For cost accounting, businesses use cost accounting to analyze the cost of their products or services and the effects of those costs in, among others, earning and pricing policies. Another branches of accounting, accounting education and accounting research. Under accounting education, teaching of accounting and related subjects required by business students, business owners, accounting practitioners, and their continuing professional development and other interested parties. So time is essence. Every learnings that we learned from the past can be changed. So you need to update your concepts related to accounting. Accounting research papers, articles, and similar publications required by business owners, professional organizations, and other interested parties. So lahat po ng bagay ay nagbabago. So you need to adapt the changes for you to meet your goal as an individual, as a business owner, or as part of the business organization. So users of accounting information, internal users, those who are directly involved in managing the business. Examples, business owners who are directly involved in managing the business, board of directors, managerial personnel. For external users, those who are not directly involved in managing the business. Examples are lenders, suppliers, creditors, and others who are not directly involved in managing the business. Now let us go to the forms of business organizations. So these are the four common forms of business organization. Number one, sole proprietor. Number two, partnership. Number three, corporation. Number four, cooperative. So there is only one owner of sole proprietor. There are two or more than two under the partnership, more than one for the corporation, more than one for the cooperative. So we call the sole proprietor, the owner of the sole proprietor. We call the partners for the partnership. We call the owners of corporation as stockholders or stakeholders. We call the owners of cooperative as members. Formation or registration, we need to register our business as a sole proprietor with the DTI. For the partnership, what's that again? Formed by contractual agreement, registered with the SEC. Formed by operation of law, that is for the corporation, registered with the SEC. Formed in accordance with the cooperative code, registered with the CDA for the cooperative. Now let us discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the sole proprietorship. So these are the different advantages of the sole proprietorship. Number one, you are the boss and you keep all the profits. So ikaw ang boss, sa'yo lahat ng kita. Decision making is simple because you have complete control over the business. So hindi po dadaan sa iba't ibang tao dahil sa'yo lang po manggagaling ang decision. Relatively easier and less costly to form because there are fewer formal business requirements. So, mas madaling mabuo ang type of business na ito since mas kakaunti po ang kakailanganin mo. Lower extent of government regulation and relatively lower taxes. Disadvantages, you assume all the risk of loss sa'yo lahat since mag-isa mo. You take all the responsibility and rely mostly on yourself in making decisions. Sa'yo po manggagaling ang responsibility na magbigay po ng decision. It is more difficult to raise capital kasi nga ikaw lang po ang panggagalingan ng capital. You are personally liable for the debts and obligations of the business. So kung may utang po ang negosyo mo, then you are personally liable for that. Partnership, these are the different advantages and disadvantages. For the advantages, number one, better business decisions can be made because two heads are better than one. So ang decision po ay manggagaling sa dalawa or higit pa sa dalawang tao. You share the business risk and the responsibility of running the business with your partners. So kapag busy ka, syempre you can talk with your partner na siya munang mag-manage. So two heads are better than one. Compared to corporations and cooperatives, a partnership is easier to form because only a contractual agreement between the partners is needed. So kapag nag-connect ang iyong kagustuhan, pwede na po kayong maging partner with the consent of each of you. Greater capital compared to a sole proprietorship. Relatively lower extent of government regulation compared to corporations. For the disadvantages, number one, making business decisions make give rise to conflict among the partners. So mahirap pong mag-decide since kailangan po ang consent ng co-partner mo po. You don't keep all the profits because you need to share them with your partners. Limited life. Why? Because if ayaw na po ng isang partner mo, pwede pong ma-dissolve po ang iyong negosyo, which is the partnership. Lesser capital compared to a corporation. A partnership other than a general professional partnership is taxed like a corporation. Unlimited liability, the partners can be held liable for the partnership debts up to their personal assets. So until na wala ka na pong maibayad. So that is one of the disadvantages of a partnership, unlimited liability. For the corporation, these are the different advantages. Number one, a stockholder who is not a member of the corporation board of directors is relieved from managerial responsibilities. Only the stockholders that are elected as members of the board of directors and those they hire or appoint are tasked with managerial responsibilities. This can be an advantage because a regular investor does not need to work for the corporation to earn income. Limited liability of the owners because stockholders are liable for corporate debts only up to the amount they have invested. So kung magkano po ang ininvest mo, yun lang po ang pwede pong masingil ng nagpapautang sa'yo. Greater capital and ease in raising additional funds because a corporation can issue shares to a wider extent of investors. Disadvantage, your say on corporate affairs depends on the number of shares you own. Those who own more shares are the bosses and enjoy a larger share of the corporation's profits. A corporation is more difficult and more costly to form because there are more formal business requirements. So mas mahirap po ang mga laws na kailangan mo pong i-abide if you want to have a corporation. Greater extent of government regulation and higher taxes. Another advantages and disadvantages. For the advantages, if the corporation is listed, you can easily transfer your shares to other investors by selling them in the stock market. Main investors earn profits this way by buying shares at a cheap price, wait for prices to go up, and then sell them. This activity is referred to as stock trading. For another advantage, unlimited life in the sense that the withdrawal, retirement, death, or insanity of one of the stockholders does not dissolve the corporation, unlike the partnership. If there is a withdrawal of one partners, then the partnership can be dissolved. Although corporation has a legal life of 50 years, this can be renewed for an indefinite number of renewals. For the disadvantage, in addition to the first slide, unlike for a sole proprietorship or a partnership where business profits are easily distributed to the owners, in a corporation, you have to wait for the board of directors to declare dividends before you get your share in the profits of the corporation. So, kailan ka po magre-record? The time na nag-declare po si board of directors. Not on the time na magbibigay po si corporation po ng kanyang dividends sa mga what I mean sa mga shareholders or stockholders. For the cooperative, these are the different advantages. Number one, disadvantage. A cooperative is prone to poor management. Cooperatives are more often than not managed by members who were elected as board of directors rather than by employed professional managers. Since there is one member, one vote policy in a cooperative, influential members tend to dominate the election process. The results that those who get elected may not be the ones who are most qualified for the task. Another, cooperative is susceptible to corruption due to its management structure and lack of profit motive. The elected officers may be inclined to act on their personal interests. For the advantages, unlike in a corporation, your say on cooperative affairs is not affected by the number of shares you owned. This is because in a cooperative, each member is entitled to one vote regardless of his or her shareholdings. However, members with large shareholdings are entitled to larger amount of profit. A cooperative is generally exempt from paying taxes. This is the main advantage of a cooperative and the most common reason why cooperatives are organized. Moreover, a cooperative may receive assistance from the government. In addition to advantages, compared to a corporation, a cooperative is easier and less costly to form because there are fewer formal business requirements compared to a corporation. Cooperative code places some restrictions on the distribution for the disadvantages of a cooperative's profit to its members. More specifically, the code requires a cooperative to appropriate a portion of its annual profit to some funds. Only the remaining portion can be distributed to the members. Furthermore, when the cooperative is dissolved, the amount accumulated in the fund called the reserve fund shall not be returned to the members but rather donated to another cooperative or to the community. Let us continue again the different advantages and disadvantages of a cooperative. Limited liability, the numbers are liable for the cooperative debts only up to the amount they have invested. Unlimited life in the sense that the withdrawal, retirement, death, or insanity of the one of the members does not dissolve the cooperative. Although a cooperative has a legal life of 50 years, this can be renewed for an indefinite number of renewals. For the disadvantages, compared to a corporation, it is more difficult for a cooperative to sustain growth. This is in part because of the lack of profit motive and lack of management expertise. Moreover, a cooperative success strongly depends on the members' cooperation, and members are not always willing to cooperate. The success of a business depends on continuing effort. Sadly, many cooperatives are zealous at the start but fail to sustain continuing efforts, resulting to the waning down of their activities. This does not mean though that all cooperatives are small businesses. There are many multi-billionaire cooperatives in our country. Some might be located in your community. Unlike in a corporation where the stockholders can freely transfer his shares, in a cooperative, there are restrictions on the transfer of a member's shares. For example, the approval of the board of directors must first be obtained before a member can transfer his or her shares. Types of business according to activities. Number one, service business. Number two, merchandising. Number three, manufacturing. So advantages of service business, you don't need to worry about your inventory costs, warehousing and distribution costs because you don't have any inventory. You only have some minimal supplies necessary and providing your services. So ano kaya yung example po ng negosyo na nagbibigay ng serbisyo po? So one of those, yung mga salon, so yung mga naggugupit, nagmamanicure, pedicure, they're using their skills for them to have an income. You may only need a small capital because what you are selling is your skill set and you only need yourself to render a service. If you are a manufacturer, you need to buy raw materials and machinery to produce your product. You're perceived as an expert in your chosen field. For the disadvantages, you may not have flexible personal time because you need to be directly involved in providing a service to a customer. You can stock inventory but not service. Until your business is big enough to be able to hire other professionals to do the work for you, you will need to render the services yourself. Service businesses normally suffer first from decline in demand during times of economic difficulty. This is because most services are perceived as luxuries rather than necessities for survival. Pero health is wealth. So absolutely, kailangan pa rin po natin ng kanilang serbisyo. Like for example, di ba, sa manicure, pedicure, sa massage, you also need that as a routine para mas lalo pong maging healthy ang ating pangangatawan. Your business success depends on your credibility. Since a service business is founded on good reputation, it's more costly to commit an error in a service business compared to a merchandising business. Now let us go to the second type, which is the merchandising business. These are the different advantages. Number one, compared to a manufacturing firm, you may need a much lower startup capital because you don't need to acquire machineries to produce goods. You can take advantage of price fluctuations. For example, when goods are on sale, you can acquire them at discounted price and resell them at much higher price. You can't do this in a service business. Lower cost of quality. This is because what you buy is what you sell. It's much easier to start a merchandising business because you don't need to have an expertise or a special skill, and you don't need to have invented a new product or have conceptualized an innovative idea for an existing product. For the different disadvantages, you need to have a retail store display your goods, and the store must be in a strategic location for it to attract more customers. Less flexibility in managing costs. This is because the cost of your goods is based primarily on their purchase price, which you do not control. Keeping track of inventory is tedious, most especially when you are selling numerous and varied items with fast turnover rate. Also, you can incur additional costs due to spoilage, theft, breakage, damages, and obsolescence. Self-satisfaction is low because you did not produce the products you sold po. So, for the merchandising concern, ikaw pa ay bumibili ng product then ibinibenta mo. For the manufacturing business, ikaw pang gumagawa ng product na ibinibenta mo. For the advantages, you have a high growth potential. You have the ability to establish. Now, let us continue with the manufacturing concern. You have a high growth potential. You have the opportunity to establish a brand that could last longer than your lifetime. Self satisfaction is high. You may not need to have strategically located retail store to display your products. You can have a better pricing policy because mass production can be decrease your unit cost, greater flexibility and managing cost. So as I told you, ang manufacturing concern ay ikaw po ang gumagawa ng product na ibinibenta mo po. Disadvantages, you need a high startup capital. Conceptualizing a viable manufacturing business is difficult. You need to be continuously innovative and abreast of changes in technology. Warehousing and logistics costs can be high. You rely on raw materials. Managing a manufacturing business can be difficult because production processes are often complicated and there is always some room for improvement. So those are the different concerns for the different types of business activities. Now, and so after the discussion, I will send to you the different activities that you will do. And absolutely, if you have a question, then you can now ask your questions. So I hope you have questions related to the discussion and related to the different activities that I will give to you based on this lesson. So after that, that ends our presentation. Thank you and God bless you. And I hope that you've learned something about our lesson or recapitulation of our lessons on basic accounting. Thank you and